Let's move on. I want to talk about Luis's reporting now. So
By the way,
I'm
just
going
want
to
to say right out
guide.
the gate, great reporting, Lewis. This was
Excellent.
really
By
well
the way,
done.
you know, Luis, if there was still an esports journalist of the year award, this is the kind of piece that would put you as a front runner for it. I think, like, really fantastic work on this.
Thank you.
And if you guys
Sadly,
haven't,
that's gone.
if you go,
Yeah.
well,
Is it sad?
we can have our own
Sad,
award
I don't
with
know.
blackjack and
Do you want
hookers.
to be there in Riyadh?
Yeah, exactly.
The little golden suitcase.
But, the idea of it was nice. The reality of it right now is less nice. So, yeah. Let's talk about this because your report, which we will link below, you actually did a couple different reports, which we're going to probably start with earlier this year, because the report you did about how they lost their YaLLa Compass lost their ranked status within the Valve ranking system actually fed directly into this catastrophe that's happening here. But the latest article you released on August 11th, it's on HLTV. It's a 5,000 word, excellently written breakdown of everything with tons of inside sources, interesting quotes. So I would encourage you guys to go ahead and read that article also. But the gist of it is this. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. YaLLa started as a team, and it was the CEO of this team. His name was what? Help me pronounce his name. Klaus Kajeski. Yeah.
Yeah, he's even got jet ski.
It does literally have the word jet ski written like that in his name. Like a badly written script.
Like a Bond
Mike Judge movie or something.
So tell us,
it's nuts.
Luis, tell us about the origins of YaLLa Compass, because in Counter-Strike you have all these different tournament operators. This is a relatively recent one that popped up in the UAE.
So basically it started out as a pure competitive esports organization in 2016. Even though the owner and founder Klaus is from Finland, the organization was based in Dubai. So it started out as an ambitious project to like build an organization that could become, I guess, what Falcons is today, right? A very successful Middle Eastern organization, and they were quite successful according to some of the people who were there. They didn't have that much success in Counter-Strike, but overall they had some success over the years. They became more and more professional. We're talking about a period of time where esports in the Middle East was not very professional, right? They didn't have the financial backing that they have these days. So yeah, over the years they became bigger and bigger. They had more and more teams. They competed in Valorant, in Counter-Strike, for example, in Honor of Kings. I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit. But they, as many other organizations, they were severely hit by the pandemic. So that came, as quite a big hit to them. They had to find different revenue sources, and that's why they pivoted to acting as an agency, right? They started, doing some events. They started working with brands more closely, and I guess over time, Klaus decided, okay, this is much more profitable than running an esports organization. So why not just close down the competitive side of the business and just focus on being like an agency? And that's what they did. I think it was at the end of 2022. Yeah, at the end of 2022, they just shut down the competitive part of the business, and they just started running as an agency. And that's in 2023. That's when they launched YaLLa Compass, which was a Counter-Strike circuit. That's when they announced their first big LAN tournament in 2024. Last year, the one that Mongols won over NIP. So yeah, pretty much just a traditional organization in its at its core, but that over time they pivoted to just something completely different, and they started running events. In this case, a Counter-Strike league and a Counter-Strike circuit.
I always think it's a bad sign when you have an organization that like pivots totally, because they were also like a media company, right, for a bit, and they tried a bit of everything, and it just reeks of grift. It just smells to high heaven. Like, this is just a bunch of people. They want to make it. They don't care how. They don't have any particular expertise. They're just chucking shit at a wall, seeing what sticks. And yeah, a lot of organizations have kind of gone down this route and ended up in the same end stage that YaLLa Compass does. I'll also add as well, the guy that's behind it didn't exactly have a stellar pedigree. This is another reason why esports is so fucking busted, that there were people out there complaining about this guy and about their time on the team where they didn't get prize money.
Yeah, this was known last year.
Yeah.
That's one thing I saw in your video, Richard. Here's the most shocking thing. There's two quick things to say about this. One is, this is actually why, by the way, it is really important that there are people like Luis doing real journalism and stories like this, because this is why, you know what, but people think we're just being like crotchety old men when we go like, Jake Lucky and Desertor's fucking social media team can't be journalism in esports. If it is, we're never going to get stories like this. They're just going to do stuff like, hey, I've heard something from a stream. Like Jake Lucky, I'm sorry, isn't going to let you know that like there's some like criminal behavior going on or people are old, because that was really shocking to me, Richard. Like if you actually go back and check, there are just people publicly saying that these companies owe them money and have never received it. And that's last year, way before a lot of like people would have worked with them now or gone to the events now. Or by the way, maybe a Valve should have looked into whether they get to have VRS points, etc. Like that's actually fucking kind of crazy in itself, mate. People have ignored that. Like this wasn't even like none of it was out there. There was like little bits. It just didn't connect to the big CS story yet. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were supposed.
The other thing, very quickly, one last thing to say as well is this is also why, by the way, I thought this would be a good episode because people must have seen many of the Saudi episodes. The one thing other to say as well is, notice in this case, it was a traditional esports scam. It was someone who claimed they had the money and then they were stealing from Peter to pay Paul and then they could never get the sponsorship they wanted, but they kept like trying to do the thing where it's like, right, now we have to get 3 times bigger to make up for what we owe before. That's the oldest esports scam in the book. But what I want to make, one last point is this. You know, when you all do that whataboutism thing that is really boring of like, you guys going about the Saudis, but what about the USA, right? Well, technically by your logic, right, UAE must be the same thing as Saudi. This isn't the UAE government funding it using the funds of the fucking country. Do you see the difference? The difference is the Saudis have a giant bag to pay people because it comes fucking oil money and they're doing it like, literally for sports washing to promote their country and to stop people talking about them. This is just a Counter-Strike tournament. This is why this isn't even the same ballpark or magnitude at all for me of what the Saudis do. So to me, don't confuse the two in that sense. Like actually, if anything, I think some people, by the way, did get tricked on this particular topic. I can tell you, Lewis, because I think some people who are like talent, for example, that I know, who never looked into the politics, they just assume all the Middle Eastern countries doing events now are like this. Like, oh, if they have an event in Dubai, it'll be the same. It's like, no, it depends whether actually like the Saudi government is involved. They're the ones that have all the money, mate, and you imagine will pay because this was just like, this reminded me of the ones from like 15 years ago, mate. It's like Richard says, this is like some sauce shit, mate. What the fuck is this?
Yeah. And yeah, they were supposed after the event in 2024, the one that Mongols won after beating an IP. This year was supposed to be a big thing for YaLLa Compass. They were supposed to follow the VRS, the new system that Valve has put in place. So they were supposed to be doing 2 LAN events. 2 LAN events this year. The first one was supposed to be held in Qatar, ended up being cancelled and moved online. Supposedly because the MRQs clashed with the event, but I got told that there were some serious doubts as to whether they would be able to pull it off, or even if they were to pull it off, it would have been nothing like what most people imagine, right? And yeah, at the start of 2025, I put out a report about the mess that Tier 2 Counter-Strike in Europe was with CCT mostly, but also YaLLa Compass. They were not following the rules that Valve set for the circuit. With CCT was
hold on, Luis, just really quickly for those people who are not the VRS system. If you guys want to understand that, we did an episode when that was announced with Messioso. It was released on August 18th of 2024, so basically a year ago exactly. It's called "Is Valve Ruining Counter-Strike Exposing Conflicts of Interest?" So if you guys are interested in that, go back and listen to that because it explains the new system. But in a nutshell, the VRS system it's the Valve regional standings, and Valve basically gives out points and keeps their own leaderboard, which is going to now, as of this next major, directly, the top 32 teams are getting directly invited, and it's based on performance on the circuit. So the MRQs that he's talking about the last ones were used for the Austin major that Blast ran a few months ago. And those were the qualifiers, but those qualifiers are not happening anymore. There was a conflict between the qualifiers and this YaLLa Compass event, allegedly, although Luis is saying he doesn't believe that's true. Within so they were like Blast suddenly had to do these qualifiers for Valve, and they ran into the tournament that was scheduled. But effectively, in order to run as part of this new system, there are an incredible number of rules about how you have to invite teams to these events in order to qualify to be a ranked event. And ranked events are the ones that contribute points so that you can now qualify for big tournaments and the major. And if you have more points, you get automatically qualified to all of the big tournaments like Cologne and whatever else is on the calendar, right? So, Luis, now continue, because that directly ties into what you're about to say about the rest of this.
I have very strong
YaLLa
reasons
stuff.
to believe that the scheduling conflict between the MRQs and YaLLa Compass Qatar ended up being a blessing in disguise, because it gave YaLLa a cop-out. It gave them a perfectly valid reason to just pull the plug on the tournament and move it online, and reduce the prize money from $600,000 to $300,000. It was a cop-out for them, pretty much. But yeah, at the start of the year, I put out a report about how the tournaments, about how CCT and YaLLa were not complying with the rules set by Valve for these tournaments, and how Valve itself instructed us, HLTV, to set those tournaments as unranked because they were not following the regulations. But when it comes to prize money, most people didn't know that this was going on, right? And it was a huge shock to a lot of people that when I told them that, there's a very strong chance that YaLLa is not going to be paying you prize money. We're talking about, for example, Navi Junior. These guys are just kids who just starting their careers, right? Now most of them moved to the Turkish organization Foot Esports. Makazi got promoted to Navi, but they were still very young players, right? 17, 18 years old. They're just starting out, and now they were supposed to be getting $75,000, which is a big deal for them, right? And they just, I had to be the one telling them there's a very strong chance you're not going to get your money. So that's always a very bad situation. And when I started looking into this, it was around the middle of July, and it was Eternal J who reached out to me. Shout out to him for doing that. It's not easy. He was telling me, okay, so there's a group of talent who have not been paid for the past 3 YaLLa Compass tournaments, and we gave them a deadline. We're thinking about putting out an open letter in case they don't get back to us. And that's how I started looking into this, but I never expected it to be this big. I never expected them to owe this much money to this many people. It goes as far back as December 2023, which is crazy, right? And some of those teams who were owed money back then were still competing in those tournaments. Like, what is going on, right? For example, Bad Boom, they are owed over $60,000, and the first tournament that they're still owed prize money from was the one that was held in December 2023. And despite that, they were still attending those tournaments in 2024. They went to the LAN to the LAN tournament that the Mongols won, which is crazy. They still kept playing in those tournaments even though they were still they were owed a lot of money. But yeah, after the chat that I had with Eternal J, I started reaching out to more people. I got to talk to some of the employees who were working there at the company, and it was like it just kept snowballing. Everyone that I talked to had like, oh, have you talked to this person? Have you talked to that person? Until I got to the commercial director, which was by far the worst story. Well, it was one of the craziest stories I've ever heard in esports, right? The guy who was supposed to come in and fix everything, magically fix everything. He had to relocate from Europe to Dubai, and he had
the fact they didn't even pay him is crazy too. He lost money joining their team. It's better.
He had to borrow money from friends and family. That's crazy.
So before we get into that part of the story here, guys, so basically what has happened now is, to summarize, YaLLa had their initial tournament in 2025. Valve stripped them of their rank status, which meant that it caused a lot of problems, obviously, for teams participating, because basically big teams only want to compete in events that have big prize pools and have ranked points, because that's being part of the circuit. And the reason why they had this pulled was because they were basically up to some shenanigans with not following Valve's rules on which teams you have to invite, because there's a whole process to, like, here are the teams, you have to invite X number of teams from this way, you have to have open qualifiers. Basically, they, as I understand it, Luis, they were not having qualifiers for this event. They were doing direct invites instead, correct?
For the first one, no, they were just
Yes.
mislabeling everything. Let me just sorry, it was
Okay.
several months ago. Just one second.
Yeah.
They were just messing up the stages of the tournament and the invites. Yeah, that it was completely a bit different from what CCT did, because CCT, they were partnered with Grid, which is like this data company, and they had this like shadow ban system where players and teams that they suspect of cheating and match fixing cannot get invited to those tournaments. But this,
Yep.
as the name implies, it's a shadow ban system. It's not something that is publicly available. And according to Valve's regulations, either you follow the VRS to a T, as in you have to follow our ranking and invite all the teams according to the ranking, or you have to be very specific and publicly announce why you cannot invite this or that team, right? So this would mean this would force CCT to say, okay, we cannot invite this team or that team because we suspect them of match fixing or cheating or whatever, and this would be grounds for a lawsuit. CCT will not risk putting themselves in that position, because their teams and organizations could very easily file lawsuits against CCT, because there are no legal basis for that, right? It was never proven that those teams committed match fixing or were involved in any cheating incidents, even though I have reasons to believe that there was something very shady and something very wrong with some of those teams and players. But, again, that's not a very transparent system. And when Valve came up with the VRS system, it was all for transparency. But yeah, as with everything in Counter-Strike, we're dealing with murky waters here. But yeah.
Yep.
So by the time that we reached the current point in time, like there is a massive crisis of previous prize money not being paid out. Like the majority of the $1 million is prize money, right? And then there's also they weren't paying their staff for several months. So it's also the people everybody got fucked, guys. Everybody got fucked. The teams that participated got fucked. The staff got fucked. Who else, Luis, got fucked in this?
Former employees,
broadcast talent.
Oh, the broadcast talent
that was working in those tournaments. They were owed over $30,000. The production company that was running the tournament, we're talking about, and this is NGES, production company based in Pakistan. They were owed a lot of money as well. And we're talking about one of the former teams that they had, an Honor of Kings team that they supported until they pivoted the organization to an agency. So we're talking about 2022. They got this roster, I think it was in February or March 2022. At the end of the year, they went to the biggest tournament, like the World Championship in Honor of Kings, and they won $250,000 because of that. And only a few months later, YaLLa was like, okay, we're shutting down the esports side of things, but we'll still pay you guys. Don't worry. In June 2023, they finally get the money from Tencent, and the players are like, okay, so where's our money? Why haven't we got our money? And Klaus had a meeting with everyone on the team, and it was like, okay, so contractually, we are entitled to a 20% cut of the prize money. Fairly standard in esports, okay? But, since our company is so busy right now, we're involved in so many projects at the same time, if you guys want your money right now, I'm going to have to pay my staff like extra money just so they can sort this out right now. And so this means we have to take an additional cut of the prize money. And also it was substantial.
I like the way he's operating this like that shit where like people who predatory loans are given to like poor people where they're like, you can cash and check now for half the money. Like, what are we doing? This is like fucking, they won a massive tournament.
Yeah. It was a substantial cut from what I got told. And the two people, the manager and one of the players said that, okay, we'll just get our money right away, even though it's a smaller cut, but it's fine. And I think it's smart on them because, if you've been in esports long enough,
Did they get the money?
They did. They did. If you've been in esports,
they won in the end.
It's better to get some of a percentage of something than nothing at all, right? But yeah,
that was a smart move. I agree.
Yeah, as time went on, the majority of the roster went to another organization, also based in the Middle East, called Stalwart Esports, and they were like, "Okay, can you guys help us with that?" And they apparently, what I got told is that they put some pressure on Klaus to pay the money. Whatever that means, I don't know exactly. I know exactly what that means, but they put some pressure on Klaus and they paid the prize money to everyone who was with Stalwart Esports right away. Okay, but
that sounds like that could have an amazing action movie based around how they indeed got them to pay that. Because I agree, the word pressure there sounds really tantalizing. But again, let's just imagine what might have happened.
Yeah, but still, some of the players and coaches and everything that were part of the team who did not move to Stalwart Esports are still owed money to this day. We're talking about a fee in the region of $50,000. And one of the players that I talked to was Abdul. He's from Egypt. He was telling me, okay, so this was in 2023. I'm owed something like $25,000. I could have bought a house with that money, right? It will never see that money, you know. He was thinking about going to Dubai to file like a lawsuit, but it's so expensive, and chances are he'll never get any of that. So he just said, okay, there's no point in me doing that.
Yeah. The thing is about lawsuits is they actually have to have money to pay you, because you can win the lawsuit, but if there's no money, then you don't get money.
And you have to fund it yourself as well. You need money yourself to fund the lawsuit. Who the fuck wants to do any of this? I also, by the way, as pointed out by that example of the guy from Egypt, the other thing I feel really bad about in cases like that is this isn't just like some person who's like an American guy who's like, oh, if esports doesn't work out, I'm just going to go do college. Like, these might be people where that might actually be life-changing money to them. When they won, they might have thought,
life-changing money.
I made it. Like, yeah, I could actually like fucking buy a house, like you say. Like, it's so dope. Like in my country, this is amazing, and they'll never see a cent of the money. That's sadly that is the esports tragedy. That's one of the classic tales.
Yeah, that's the worst part of esports for sure. And yeah, you know. When I started looking into this, I started talking to teams, Navi Junior, for example, ENS, Big. Have you guys got your money? No, we still haven't been paid. Do you know anything about YaLLa? Okay, so I don't want to be the one to give you the bad news, but I'm I have reasons to believe you will not be getting anything because they are pretty much just shutting down. And even I talked to Mongols, and then IP was this is very sad. For example, this was during Cologne, and Mongols were making a deep run in Cologne. So this was right during the playoffs, and I was talking to their social media manager, who has very good English. It was like, okay, when are you thinking about putting out the story? I'm thinking, okay, maybe the start of August or something like that. Okay, that's fine. Okay, because if you were to put out the story right away, it will have like a negative impact on our players. And as someone from Mongolia getting like $50,000, that's a lot of money, right? So it's very sad that something like this could have such a negative impact on the players that would affect their performance in the tournament. But yeah, I have reasons to believe, and according to my reporting, that the prize money owed is in the region of $700,000, and salaries, we're talking $150,000. There's also a former employee who filed a lawsuit against YaLLa, and the courts ruled in his favor. We're talking about roughly $270,000 plus the production company, plus the talent, plus freelancers, plus talking easily. I think by my calculations, almost we're talking about close to $2 million.
Yeah, I was going to say it's definitely.
Easily,
I think it's closer to two than one.
Yeah.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.